They whispered she was fading away, a quiet widow lost in memories. But when Eleanor stepped into that auction house, everything changed. The painting she revealed wasn't just art. It was a lifetime of secrets about to be uncovered. Dining alone, someone like that probably eats lunch alone forever, a waiter muttered as Rachel Monroe entered Giacomo's. Her wrinkled white blouse and glasses making her look like a lost elementary school teacher. A woman at the next table chuckled. Bet there'll be a TikTok soon. Ordinary girl saves the world mid-lunch. But just minutes later, when a Navy SEAL collapsed in convulsions, it was that ordinary girl who rushed over and opened an airway with a dinner knife in under 10 seconds. And when the entire SEAL team stood at attention before her, the whole restaurant froze. Rachel walked into Giacomo's like she was stepping into any old diner, her faded jeans soughing softly on the polished wood floor. The place was all candlelight and crisp white tablecloths. The kind of upscale Italian spot in Norfolk's Defense Commerce District where Navy officers brought their wives to show off. Her blouse hung loose a little forget too big, like she had pulled it from the bottom of a laundry pile. Her glasses slipped down her nose, and her hair fell in loose waves. Untouched by a brush or any fuss, she didn't look around. Didn't scan the room for approval. She just headed straight for the last table by the window, the one with a view of the harbor, where ships loomed like shadows in the dusk. The hostess, a woman with a tight smile and a clipboard, raised an eyebrow, but led her over without a word. Rachel sat her movements quiet, deliberate like she was used to being invisible. The waiter, a kid named Tony with slick back hair and a smirk that screamed he was working for tips from the big spenders, sauntered over. Just you? He asked, his tone sharp like she was wasting his time. Rachel nodded, her eyes already on the menu. Pasta primavera water, she said, her voice soft but steady, the kind that didn't invite argument. Tony scribbled it down but not before muttering to a passing busboy. Didn't even book and still wants the best view. The busboy snickered, glancing at Rachel like she was some kind of oddity. At the next table, a woman in a silk dress, her nails painted a glossy red, leaned toward her friend. Who eats alone at a place like this? She said, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses. Her friend, a guy with a Rolex glinting on his wrist, laughed. Bet she's here on a dare. Look at those jeans. A couple at a corner table, their plates piled with lobster ravioli, exchanged a glance. The woman, her hair stray with highlights and her earrings dangling, nudged her husband. She's probably a blogger trying to get some sad sack content for her followers, she said loud enough for Rachel to hear. Her husband, a man with a navy blazer and a smug grin, nodded. Yeah, where she's lost. This isn't Applebee's. A few nearby diners chuckled, their eyes darting to Rachel, who didn't look up. She adjusted her glasses, her fingers steady, and turned the page of the menu like their words were just background noise. The woman kept going, her voice rising. I mean, who wears that to Giacomo's? She's embarrassing herself. Rachel's hand paused on her glass just for a moment before she took a slow sip of water, her face unreadable. The manager, a guy named Carl, with a tie that looked like it was choking him, caught wind of the chatter. He strode over his shoes, clicking on the floor, and stopped at Rachel's table. Are you sure you can afford this? He asked, arms crossed, his voice loud enough to turn heads. A couple at a nearby table paused, their forks hovering. Rachel didn't look up. She just opened the menu again, pointed at the pasta dish, and said, this and water. Her tone wasn't angry, but it had a weight to it, like she was drawing a line. Carl hesitated, then walked away, muttering something about standards. The woman in the silk dress laughed again, this time louder. She's probably posting this on X right now. Lone girl at fancy restaurant. Living my truth. Her friend snorted, pulling out his phone to snap a picture of Rachel's back. Hey, if this story is grabbing you, can you do me a quick favor? Pull out your phone, hit that like button, leave a comment about what's hitting you hard, and subscribe to the channel. It keeps these stories alive, and I know you're feeling this one. Alright, let's keep going. As Rachel waited for her food, a group of young officers at a long table near the bar started whispering. One of them, a lieutenant with a crisp haircut and a cocky tilt to his head, leaned forward. Bet she's some intern who wandered in from the Navy Yard, he said, his voice carrying a sneer. His buddies laughed, one of them mimicking her posture, slouching in his chair with an exaggerated frown. Look at me. I'm eating alone and loving it, he mocked, holding up an imaginary fork. The group erupted, their laughter, sharp and cutting. Rachel's fingers tightened around her napkin, but she didn't turn. She just folded it neatly, placing it beside her plate. Her movement slow like she was anchoring herself. The lieutenant kept going, his voice louder now. What's she even doing here? This place is for people who belong. A woman at his table, her lipstick bright, smirked. Maybe she's waiting for her imaginary date to show up. A man in a pinstripe suit seated with a group of corporate types leaned back in his chair, his voice dripping with condescension. I bet she's one of those activists here to make a statement about eating alone, empowerment or some nonsense, he said, air quoting with his fingers. His table laughed, their glasses linking as they toasted to their own cleverness. He pointed at Rachel, not even bothering to lower his voice. Look at her sitting there like she's above it all. Pathetic. Rachel's hand stilled on her menu, her fingers brushing the edge of the paper. She didn't look up, but her shoulders squared slightly, a subtle shift that went unnoticed by the jeering table. The man's colleague, a woman with a pearl brooch, added, "She's probably just here to eavesdrop on real conversations." Their laughter grew a cruel edge to it as Rachel pushed her glasses up her nose. Her movements measured like she was holding something heavy at bay. The restaurant hummed with life, waiters weaving through tables, wine bottles catching the candlelight. The low murmur of conversations about Navy contracts and weekend plans. Rachel sat quietly, her fork moving in small, precise bites. She didn't rush, didn't fidget. Her glasses caught a flicker of light as she glanced out the window, watching a tugboat glide past in the harbor. Then the front door swung open and a group of Navy SEALs walked in. 6 of them, all muscle and confidence, their boots heavy on the floor. They were in civilian clothes, but you could tell what they were. Shoulders back, eyes scanning the room like they owned it. The hostess scrambled to find them a table, her clipboard forgotten. They settled near Rachel, their laughter loud, their voices carrying stories of training ops and bar fights. The leader, a guy named Marcus, with a scar running across his jaw, paused as he sat down. His eyes landed on Rachel, and for a split second he froze. His hand gripped the back of his chair, and he gave her a nod so quick it was almost nothing. Then he looked away like he didn't want to be caught staring. One of the younger SEALs, a kid named Dylan with a buzz cut and a grin that screamed trouble, leaned over. "Boss, you know her?" Marcus shook his head, his voice low. "Heard of her, maybe?" "Not sure." His fingers tapped the table like he was trying to place her. Rachel didn't seem to notice. She took a sip of water. Her movements calm, like the chaos of the room didn't touch her. A busboy clearing a nearby table tripped, nearly dropping a tray of glasses as he stared at Rachel. He caught himself, but not before whispering to Tony, the waiter. "She's got to be a nobody, right? Look at her." Tony smirked, wiping his hands on his apron. "Probably some charity case who saved up for a meal." He walked over to Rachel's table, setting down a basket of bread with a thud, letting a few rolls tumble onto the tablecloth. "Oops," he said, not even pretending it was an accident. A table of business types nearby, their suits crisp and their watches expensive, caught the exchange and laughed. One of them, a woman with a sleek bob, said, "Bet she's writing a Yelp review already." Its service was rude, but the view was nice. Rachel didn't react. She picked up a roll, broke it in half, and ate it slowly, her eyes fixed on the harbor outside. The SEALs' table got louder, their stories growing bigger with every beer. Dylan, the young one, laughed too loud, pointing at Rachel. "Look at that one. Bet she thinks she's in a spy movie or something." The others chuckled, and the woman in the silk dress, her name tag reading Claire, jumped in. "She looks like a burnout schoolteacher," she said, her voice dripping with mock pity. She pulled out her phone again, snapping another photo of Rachel, this time zooming in on her wrinkled blouse. Her friend, the Rolex guy named Brad, grinned. "Bet she's got a blog, How to Eat Alone and Feel Empowered." The table next to them, a group of young professionals joined in their giggles. Sharp and mean, Tony, the waiter, came back with Rachel's water, slamming the glass down so hard it splashed onto the tablecloth. He didn't say sorry. Rachel just picked up her napkin, wiped the spill, and kept eating, her face as calm as a still pond. Across the room, an older couple, their table littered with empty wine glasses, started murmuring. The man, his tie loosened and his face flushed, pointed at Rachel. "She's probably some kind of scam artist," he said, his voice slurring just enough to carry. His wife nodded, her pearl necklace glinting as she leaned in. "I saw a story on the news about people pretending to be down on their luck to get free meals." She raised her voice like she wanted Rachel to hear. "This place should check IDs or something." A few heads turned, nodding in agreement. Rachel's hand paused on her fork, her knuckles whitening for just a second before she set it down carefully. She adjusted her glasses, her movement slow, and looked out the window again, her expression unchanged, like she was carving out a space where their words couldn't reach. Then it happened. One of the SEALs, a guy named Jake with a tattoo of an anchor peeking out from his sleeve, coughed hard, once, twice. His face turned red and he grabbed his throat, his chair scraping as he stood. Before anyone could react, he collapsed, hitting the floor like a bag of sand. His body twitched, convulsing, his eyes rolled back. The restaurant exploded. Screams, chairs toppling, people jumping up. Claire, the woman in the silk dress, shrieked, "Oh my God." Brad pulled out his phone, not to call for help, but to start filming. The SEALs froze, their training kicking in, but not fast enough. Marcus shouted, "Get a doctor," but Rachel was already there. She swept her plate aside, her fork clattering, and was at Jake's side in 3 steps. She knelt, her hands steady, checking his pupils, then his pulse. "Level 4 neurological," she said, her voice low but clear. "Possible neurotoxin or oxygen blockage." She started thievier, her hands pressing hard on his chest, counting under her breath like it was second nature. As Rachel worked, a woman in a navy blazer, her badge identifying her as a Navy contractor, pushed through the crowd. "Who is she to touch him?" she demanded, her voice sharp with indignation. She turned to the manager, pointing at Rachel. You let just anyone play hero in here, the crowd murmured, some nodding, others craning their necks to see. Rachel didn't look up. She kept her rhythm, her hands steady on Jake's chest. The contractor kept going, her voice rising. This is a seal, not some random guy. She's probably making it worse. A man in a golf shirt nearby chimed in. Yeah, where's her license? You don't just cut into people. Rachel's glasses slipped slightly, but she pushed them up with her wrist. Her focus unbroken, her silence louder than their accusations. Another seal, a big guy named Trey with a shaved head and a scowl, grabbed her arm. What the hell are you doing? He barked, his grip tight enough to bruise. Rachel didn't even glance at him. Unless you want him dead in 2 minutes. Move, she said, her voice like a blade. Trey let go his face, a mix of shock and anger. Carl, the manager, pushed through the crowd, his tie flapping. She's not a doctor. Someone call 911. He yelled, his voice high with panic. Claire, still clutching her phone, screamed, stop her, she could have poisoned him. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding, others whispering. Rachel's jaw tightened, but her hands didn't stop. One kept up the compressions. The other tugged Jake's collar loose, her fingers moving like they'd been here before, in worse places than a fancy restaurant. In the chaos, a young woman at a nearby table, her hair in a messy bun and her phone still recording, leaned toward her friend. This is fake, right? She's got to be an actress or something, she said, her voice loud enough to carry. Her friend, a guy with a man bun, nodded. Yeah, no way someone like her knows what she's doing. Look at her clothes. The crowd shifted, some glancing to get a better view, others muttering agreement. Rachel's hand faltered for a split second, just long enough to notice before she pressed harder, her rhythm unbroken. She tilted Jake's head back, checking his airway, her movements precise despite the noise. The young woman kept filming, her voice smug. This is going viral for sure. Wannabe hero fails at PR. Rachel didn't react, but her lips pressed into a thin line, her focus like a laser. Jake's lips were turning blue, his chest barely moving. Rachel's eyes narrowed, her hands pausing for a split second as she pressed her fingers to his throat. Tracheal blockage, she said almost to herself. She glanced at the table, her eyes landing on a steak knife, its blade glinting under the candlelight. She grabbed it, holding it up like it was an extension of her hand. The crowd gasped. Brad, still filming, muttered, she's insane. Claire clutched her friend's arm, her nails digging in. She's going to kill him. Rachel didn't flinch. She leaned over Jake, her movements precise, and made a small, clean incision at the base of his throat. A perfect emergency tracheotomy. Jake's chest heaved, a ragged breath escaping, his pulse steadying. The room went silent, the only sound, the faint gurgle of his breathing and the distant wail of sirens. As the paramedics rushed in, a man in a tailored suit, his golf-links flashing, stepped forward. You're not qualified for this, he snapped, his voice dripping with authority. He turned to the crowd, gesturing at Rachel. This is a liability. She could have killed him. The paramedics ignored him, their focus on Jake as they strapped him to the stretcher. Rachel stood, wiping her hands on her jeans, her blouse now stained with blood. The man kept going, his voice louder now. I'm a lawyer and I'm telling you, this place is done if she's not licensed. A few people nodded, their murmurs growing. Rachel's shoulders tensed, but she didn't respond. She stepped back, her eyes flicking to the stretcher as it rolled out, her expression calm, but her hands still clenched at her sides. The paramedics burst in, their boots loud on the floor. They took over, strapping Jake to a stretcher and rushing him out. Rachel stepped back, wiping her hands on her jeans, a smear of blood staining her blouse. She didn't say a word. The crowd was still staring, some in awe, others in disbelief. Claire, her face pale, now muttered, maybe she staged the whole thing to go viral. Brad, still holding his phone, whispered, could be a spy. Don't trust it. A retired general, his chest heavy with medals, stood up from a corner table. His name tag read General Hawkins. Where were you trained? He asked, his voice sharp like he was interrogating a recruit. Rachel looked at him, her eyes steady behind her glasses. Camp Hosetan. 12 years ago. That was all she said before walking back to her table, picking up her fork and sitting down like the world hadn't just shifted. As Rachel returned to her seat, a middle-aged woman with a diamond bracelet, her voice thick with disdain, leaned toward her companion. She thinks she's some kind of savior, doesn't she? Probably practiced that little stunt in her garage. Her companion, a man with a goatee, chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, it's all for show. Nobody's that good without a script. Their words carried slicing through the restaurant's stunned silence. Rachel's fork paused midair, her fingers tightening around the handle, but she didn't look their way. She set the fork down, aligning it perfectly with her plate, her movements deliberate, like she was channeling her anger into precision. The woman noticed, smirking. Oh look, she's playing the part now. So serious. A few nearby diners snickered, their eyes darting to Rachel, who adjusted her glasses, her silence a shield against their scorn. The seals were quiet now, their earlier bravado gone. Marcus, the leader, kept glancing at her, his fingers tapping his glass nervously. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, his hands trembling just a little. He flipped it open, and there it was, an old photo creased and faded of a special ops unit in some dusty desert. A young woman stood in the middle, her eyes sharp, her posture steady. Rachel, he pointed at the photo, his voice low. This was you in Kandahar 2012. Rachel looked up her fork, pausing mid-bite. She gave a small nod, the faintest smile crossing her lips. The SEALs didn't need another word. As one, they stood their chairs scraping and snapped to attention. Right there in the middle of Giacomo's, the whole restaurant froze again. Forks halfway to mouths, wine glasses forgotten, a waiter passing by. Not Tony, but another kid with a nervous look, stopped dead when he saw the SEAL standing. He whispered to a colleague, "What's going on? Why are they saluting her?" The colleague, a woman with a tired face, shrugged, but couldn't look away. "Maybe she's somebody," she said, her voice low. The nervous waiter shook his head unconvinced. "Nah, she's just milking the moment. Look at her acting all humble." He set down a tray of glasses too hard. The clatter drawing eyes. Rachel didn't react, but her fingers brushed the edge of her glass. A small, steady movement like she was grounding herself. The SEAL stayed standing there, posture rigid, their silence a wall against the whispers. The nervous waiter backed off, his face red, but the doubt in his eyes lingered. Rachel didn't react. She finished her pasta, took a sip of water, and signaled for the check. Tony, the waiter, brought it over, his hands shaking now, his smirk long gone. She paid in cash, leaving exact change, and stood to leave. The whisper started again as she walked toward the door. Brad, the Rolex guy, muttered, "So what if she's good? Still just a nurse, not an officer." Claire, scrolling on her phone, added, "Bet she staged it for TikTok fame." Rachel didn't turn, she didn't pause, but just as she reached the door, Marcus's voice cut through the noise. He was standing now, his scar catching the light. "She's no ordinary nurse. She's the reason I'm alive." As Rachel reached for the door, a man in a polo shirt, his face flushed from too much wine, called out, "Hey hero, where's your medal?" "Oh wait, you don't have one." His table erupted in laughter, the sound sharp and cruel. A woman next to him, her designer purse on the table, joined in. "Yeah, she probably just got lucky. Anyone can cut a throat with a knife." Rachel's hand rested on the door handle, her finger still for a moment. She turned her head slightly, just enough to meet the man's eyes. "Luck saves no one," she said, her voice quiet, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. The man's laugh faltered, his glass frozen halfway to his mouth. Rachel pushed the door open and stepped outside the harbor breeze, swallowing the sound of the restaurant behind her. Rachel stepped outside, the evening air cool against her skin. She didn't look back. Inside, the restaurant was still buzzing, but it wasn't the same. Claire got a call that night from her boss, a peer exec who'd seen the video Brad posted online. By morning, she was out of a job, her name trending on X for all the wrong reasons. Brad's firm, which handled Navy contracts, got a call from a furious admiral after his spy comment went viral. His contract was under review by noon. Tony, the waiter, was let go by the end of the week. Carl citing unprofessional conduct in a memo that didn't mention Rachel, but didn't need to. None of them saw it coming. None of them thought their words would matter. The next morning, a local news van parked outside Giacomo's, a reporter interviewing diners who'd been there. One of them, a woman in a sundress who'd been quiet during the chaos, clutched her coffee and said, "I saw her eyes. She wasn't scared. She knew exactly what she was doing." The reporter pressed for more, but the woman just shook her head, her voice soft. "You don't forget someone like that." The story spread. Clips of Brad's video looping on X, the comment section, a mix of awe and apologies. Claire's name popped up in a thread, her cruel words quoted verbatim. By evening, her LinkedIn profile was gone, her agency issuing a statement about reassessing staff conduct. Rachel, meanwhile, was nowhere near a screen. She was at home folding laundry, her glasses fogging up from the steam of her iron. In the hospital, Jake woke up, his wife at his side, her hand clutching his. His first words were, "She knew everything in advance." He didn't stop there. He sat up, still weak, and wrote a letter to the Department of Defense, his handwriting shaky but determined. He requested a commendation for Rachel, detailing every second of what she'd done, how she'd moved, how she'd known, how she'd saved him. The letter was short, but it hit like a freight train. By the next day, it was circulating online, shared by Navy accounts, and picked up by local news. Rachel Monroe, combat medic involved in 3 Black Ops missions, saved a SEAL's life with a steak knife at lunch. One post read, it racked up millions of views, comments pouring in from people who had been in that restaurant or wished they had. At a Navy bar across town, a group of enlisted sailors gathered that night, their beers raised as they talked about Rachel. One of them, a petty officer with a scarred hand, pulled up the viral post on his phone. "I was in Kandahar in 12, he said, his voice low. "Heard about a medic who pulled a guy out of a burning truck. Never saw her face, but they said she was like a ghost there. 1 second, gone the next." His buddy, a younger sailor, leaned in. "You think that's her?" The petty officer shrugged, but his eyes didn't leave the screen. "If it is, she's the real deal." The bar got quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that comes when people realize they've been wrong about someone. They linked their glasses, a silent toast to the woman none of them really knew. 2 days later, a letter arrived at Rachel's apartment, a small place with a view of the harbor. It was unofficial Navy letterhead sealed with a crest, an invitation, not to return as a nurse, but as strategic medical advisor to SEAL Team 4. She read it standing in her kitchen, her glasses slipping down her nose. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She just folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer next to a faded photo of her own. A younger Rachel in combat gear standing beside a Humvee in the desert. She went back to her coffee, the mug warm in her hands, and stared out at the ships in the distance. The next day, she showed up at the Navy headquarters, her blouse still wrinkled, her jeans still faded. The SEALs were waiting, standing at attention in a conference room that smelled of coffee and old leather. Marcus stepped forward, his scar more visible in the fluorescent light. He didn't say much, just handed her a badge with her name on it. Rachel Monroe, strategic medical advisor. She took it, nodded, and walked past them. Her step steady, her eyes forward. The room was silent, but you could feel it. The weight of respect earned the hard way, as Rachel walked down the hall. A young Innan, his uniform crisp, hesitated at the door. He'd been at Giacomo standing in the back, watching the whole thing unfold. He stepped forward, his voice low. "Ma'am, I didn't say anything that night, but I should have. You were incredible." Rachel stopped her hand on her bag and looked at him. Her eyes softened just for a second. "You're saying it now?" she said, her voice quiet but warm. The ensign nodded, his face red, and stepped back, saluting her as she walked away. The other SEALs watched their silence, a kind of promise to never underestimate her again. Giacomo's never recovered. Carl tried to spin it, putting up a photo of Rachel on the wall, calling her a local hero. It didn't work. People stopped coming. The tables emptier each night. The story was too big, the shame too real. Claire deleted her social media after her comments were screenshotted and shared, her name tied to hashtags like Giacomo's incident. Brad lost his sponsorship with a local gym chain when the video of his smirk hit the wrong audience. Tony found a job at a dive bar across town, but he never talked about Giacomo's again. Life moved on, but it left scars. Quiet ones, the kind that don't fade. And that's the thing about Rachel. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to prove herself. She just stood there in her wrinkled blouse and old jeans and let the truth do the talking. You've been judged before, haven't you? Looked down on, written off like you didn't belong. You know how it feels, and you know what it's like to keep going anyway. To hold your ground, to walk away with your head high. Rachel did that, and she's still out there doing it. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.